It was 1977. I had taken time off work to have a baby and stay home with her. But I still needed an income. So my mother had hired my younger sister and me to do the dirty, back-breaking work in her shop while she took care of her first infant granddaughter. My sister and I were working at our mom's antique store one summer day. Mom had just gotten a truckload of European oak furniture that needed to be cleaned and polished, have the handles screwed on and so forth. A nice-looking young man came into the store and started talking to my sister, who was 17 at the time. He introduced himself as Ted Smith, and we laughed and said we must be related as Mom's maiden name was Smith also. He chatted both of us up, but focused on Sis for the most part. He purchased an armoire, but said he'd have to go get his truck, since at the moment he was driving his VW Bug, an old VW Bug. He then asked my sister and me if we wanted to go out to dinner that night with him. We were sweaty and dirty from work. I had a baby to care for, and Sis already had a boyfriend, so we said thanks, but no thanks, Ted. He asked me to ride with him to get his truck so he could drop his Bug off at the auto shop for repairs. But by that point, I had to get home to my infant, right away, because I was still nursing her, and I thought my breasts were going to begin leaking at any minute. However, he wouldn't give up trying to get one or both of us away from the shop. He said he could come back about 10 o'clock that evening for his armoire and asked whether one or both of us be there. We replied, no, we close the shop at 6, and we both have places to be tonight. He was persistent. How about tomorrow night? No, we close at 6 o'clock, except on Saturdays, when we close at 4 o'clock. He asked whether one of us could meet him early in the morning, like at 5:30 a.m., but neither of us wanted to. He was getting to be a bit creepy, and Sis and I were eye-rolling at each other. Eventually, he said he was sorry, but he couldn't buy the armoire if we couldn't be flexible. We hated to give up the sale, but after he had been there for 2 hours, we thought he was just looking and taking up our time. We still had a lot of work to do on the furniture that had just arrived in the shop. Finally, we just wanted to finish our work and go home. At 6 p.m., as we were leaving, his VW Bug was parked outside, and he asked us whether we want to go for coffee. He especially wanted my sister to go. We said, thanks, Ted, but no thanks. Like we said earlier, we have plans. But he continued to be insistent. Finally, I said, Sis, let's go. I'll take you home. Even though she had her car there, for some reason I didn't want to leave her to drive home alone with this guy around. So he drove off in his Bug, and we really didn't think of it again. Until the next year, when this picture appeared in the paper. It was none other than Ted Bundy. Me and my friend, who I won't say their name, were going to a haunted house in our area. It was crazy because we never actually went inside of a haunted house. It was always usually the normal trick or treating. We were both 11 at the time, so we were walking to the haunted house. When we had finally arrived, it was creepy as hell. It looked very realistic, and I knew that these people spent a lot of time into the haunted house. It was a maze-like haunted house. You had to find your way out in darkness. When we were inside, my friend decided that she wouldn't go ahead in first, and that I would have to lead the way. I felt annoyed, but it was fine. It was very dark and I couldn't see well. A fake Michael Myers-looking guy scared the shit out of me. Then there was a basement, which I sadly didn't know about as I tumbled down the stairs. They never told you how to get out, so I assumed you'd have to find a door. My friend saw a door which seemed to be a way out. She opened it and I followed after her. It wasn't that good of a discovery, though, as we saw some dark red in the door which had a light on. We both ran out of there ASAP. I legit was scared of being in there now. I then saw another guy who said he found the way out. Me and my friend both went out and thanked the guy nicely. We were then walking home disturbed, but relieved that we got out of there. We then saw a guy pull up saying he had candy in his car. I was very stupid back then, and I decided to follow while my friend went along too. When we made it to his car, he opened the trunk of it and had a lot of candy in there. I was so happy and wanted as much of it as possible. He then said this, I have a lot more at my house. You two want to go? We were total nincompoops and went around by the side door, when my friend spotted about 4 other men inside of the car, some with creepy-looking smiles, and they were the creepiest-looking guys I ever saw. Yellow teeth, most with balding black or brown hair. A bald guy with a tattoo on his neck. My friend got scared shitless and ran away. I followed her, and the car followed behind us. The car decided to go slowly but make sure it could see us. I assumed to not look suspicious. I then decided to run into the woods to hide because we were in a dead-end street at that point. My friend went behind some bushes. I came up with an idea, and I'll forever thank the game hide-and-seek for this. I told my friend to come next to me, and I led her down under a bunch of branches. It was different because these branches surrounded the area, and they were dipped down from a small hill on a rocky-ish surface, almost like a small cave. I then grabbed other branches to surround us completely to the point where we would be nearly, if not even impossible to see from a nearby angle. We both heard footsteps and held our breath. We then saw feet right next to us, but go down the hill. We heard other footsteps go farther, farther, and farther. When we couldn't hear them anymore, we both removed the branches as quickly as we could and sprinted to my house. We called the police, but couldn't do much since we didn't get the license plate, so we just dropped the whole thing and moved on. That was easily the scariest moment in my life. This moment hasn't ruined Halloween for me, though, and I still love the holiday. I'm sure I'll never forget this moment, though. About 10 years ago, I was recently divorced and living alone in a 1-bedroom apartment. The place was clean and the rent was decent. One of those places that had a doorman. I felt safe here. I was alone and loving it, focused on my career and not on my clingy ex-husband. Things were finally looking up for me. At the time, I was working pretty late at the office and would often stumble into my apartment sleep-deprived in the early hours of the morning and wake up by 6:30, 7-ish to start the day. I started noticing that in the morning my door would be unlocked sometimes. I usually dismissed this as my sleep-dead brain, thinking that the bed looked more appealing than locking the door. Another thing that I noticed since moving in was that I seemed to misplace things more than I used to. Little things like a hairbrush or nail polish, that sort of thing. It wasn't really that big of a deal, just enough to be a slight annoyance in my day. The longer I lived there, the more frequently I seemed to forget to lock the door. At first it was every once in a while, then it seemed like an almost daily occurrence. More things went missing, things like pictures, shaving razors, and most disturbingly, my underwear. This went on for long enough that I started to get a little paranoid. I started to take the time at night to make sure the door was locked. I got into a habit of every night after I locked the door to turn the handle 3 times and say to myself, "It's locked, it's locked, it's locked." Time after time, I would wake up and the door would be unlocked. One time I even tried staying up all night to watch the door, but I ended up falling asleep in my chair. I decided that my mind was not reliable enough to stay up all night, so I invested in a video camera. I went all out and bought the fanciest camera that I could get my hands on. So one night I set the camera up facing the door. I hid the camera under a pile of towels on the floor. I locked the door and went to bed. When I woke up, my apartment looked normal, nothing missing that I could see. I decided to check the tape. I fast-forwarded through hours of footage, not seeing anything. I was just about to give up when I noticed the handle of the door jitter. Then it slowly crept open. A figure slid through the half-open door and walked towards the camera. It paused, looked around as if it was listening for something, then walked forward into direct view of the camera. I paused the camera. The hairs on my arms and the back of my neck started to rise. I was staring directly into the face of the maintenance man of the building. I could see those big, thick glasses and curly hair. I had no doubt who it was. I played the tape a little more. He looked comfortable as he walked around the apartment. Then he turned and walked towards my bedroom and out of the view of the camera. I didn't know what to do. Sobbing, I called the police. I tried to explain over the phone but couldn't. Soon enough, 2 officers arrived at my doorstep. I told them everything and showed them the tape. I remember seeing the blood drain from their faces. They promised me that I was safe and that they were going to get this guy. I needed to lay down, but didn't want to be alone. One of the officers offered to stand outside my apartment door as I took a nap. As I was laying in bed unable to sleep but drained to move, something kept nagging at me. I laid there for a few minutes, tossing and turning, unable to get comfortable or rest. My mind was racing. Then a realization slowly washed over me and chilled me to the bone. We watched the tape and saw the man enter my home, but we never saw him leave. I froze, then started shaking. I needed to get to the front door. I sat up and looked around the room. I couldn't see anyone. I swung my legs over the side of the bed cautiously. My feet hit the cold wood floor and I felt warm breath on my ankles. I raced out of my apartment as fast as I could into the safety of the police officer. He called for backup. They found the man under my bed, clutching a knife and a Polaroid camera.